I'm Lynn McDonald, she, her. I don't believe in God. I think the concept was invented by humans to explain the seemingly random things that happen, to comfort and inspire ourselves, and in the worst cases, to create hierarchical systems to control people and concentrate wealth in the hands of a few. I think some things happen for a reason, some of which we understand and some of which we don't, and some things happen for no reason. Either way, we're left to live with the things that happen and to respond to them as best we can. Having a way to determine how to respond to life is our task. I believe that there are many right answers to the questions and quandaries of life, and that vast oceans of wisdom and kindness have accompanied human experience since the beginning of time. There are also vast oceans of stupidity and hatefulness, but these are not going to help me in my quest to live my best life. In the midst of all this, it's up to each of us to create meaning and a sense of purpose for ourselves, since meaning and purpose are not inherent characteristics of life. I've found that what I do in the early morning affects the rest of my day, sometimes in profound ways. I have a stack of homemade atheist prayers that I've created and revised over the years, adaptations of things I've read or things I've written myself. I rotate through them one a day. I have a couple that I say every day, and often the words I find are just the ones that I needed that day to deal with a current situation. Random, but helpful. I've tried calling them meditations or affirmations, but the word prayer keeps reasserting itself, so I've given up trying to call them anything else. These prayers are addressed to my Divine Mother. Let me say a bit about her. The Divine Mother formed in my mind and heart from my experiences of being a daughter and being a mother. When I held my newborn daughter, Lydia, in my arms for the first time, I felt a deep, unconditional love, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I also remember being on the receiving end of that kind of love from my own parents when I was very small. Things got more complicated as I got older, but that body and heart memory of absolute unconditional love is still inside me. Then, after my mother died, it was a comfort to me to imagine her in the heaven she believed in, with all her earthly burdens fallen away, all the burdens that got in the way of her being the unconditionally loving mother I longed for when she was alive. In her divine form, she could fully love and support me. When I conjure an image of a loving mother figure and imbue her with qualities of unconditional love, wisdom, acceptance, understanding, and support, and when I say aloud what I'm seeking for the day, clarity on a particular situation maybe, or a calming of my frequent feeling of self-doubt, or a letting go of my tendency to blame others for situations beyond my control, I'm often able to access what's needed to move well through my day. Something about saying the words out loud gives me a door into my intentions later in the day when I need a reminder. The Divine Mother is my own creation, without any supernatural powers to intercede in my life, except that the idea of her helps me to access the vast oceans of wisdom and courage that are inside me and all around me, and help me live the life I want to live, one of kindness, generosity, love, compassion, acceptance, and engagement. So here's my homemade atheist prayer for the morning. This one is adapted from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, pages 86 to 87. Divine Mother, within and outside me, all around me, please send me inspiration or an intuitive thought or decision as I plan my day. Help me be open to your guidance as I choose how to spend my precious time. Give me the willingness and ability to walk a path of healing and growth. Remind me that you're with me, so that if I face doubt or agitation, You can send me the next right thought, word, or action if I only remember to ask. I release yesterday and any heaviness or self-doubt it held. I open myself to the gifts of today that lie before me for the taking.
Thank you, Michael. I just want to say how grateful I am to this community, to Michael. That was really good. And Lynn, that was great. Thank you. Very inspirational. I really appreciate Kevin to be here and to fill in for Ian, who also did a lot of work helping to organize the music, even though he couldn't participate today. In the Story for All Ages, we shared a moment of differences, courage, and connection. I'd like to carry those themes with us now as I speak about what it means to live honestly in a community that welcomes me so warmly. Honesty begins with the story of how I first learned to question the beliefs I was raised with, not out of rebellion, but out of a genuine desire to understand the world and my place in it. Before I tell that story, I want to say something about where Unitarian Universalism generally stands on atheism and humanism. Since the 20th century, humanism has been a major part of the evolving religious identity. Many UUs are atheists or agnostics who find meaning not in supernatural explanations, but in human responsibility, ethical living, and a search for truth. We recently heard from Barbara Williams talk about humanism, which doesn't address atheism directly, but provides a moral framework for many atheists and agnostics. Our tradition doesn't ask us to agree on theology. It asks us to agree on compassion, on justice, and on the inherent worth of dignity of every person. It asks us to build a community across differences, and it trusts that people like me, people who don't believe in a supernatural God, still have a place here, still have wisdom to offer, and still belong. That sense of belonging matters deeply to me, and it's part of why I share my journey with you today. I was born and raised as a Roman Catholic and attended Catholic schools. For the most part, it was a positive experience. But around confirmation time, things shifted. As we explored the Catholic tradition more deeply, I found myself completely baffled and honestly unmoved by the story of Christ. He seemed like a good and charismatic man who had a terrible thing happen to him. And the idea that he died for our sins just didn't make sense to me. If God created us and we sinned, what exactly did Jesus' death have to do with that? Why would an all-powerful being need such a mechanism? I assumed the problem was me, that I was missing something, that I would understand better or later as I got older. I treated my confusion as an intellectual failing rather than a sign that an explanation itself might not hold together. And college brought another truth to the surface, one that I had been circling for years without naming, and I kind of came out to myself as gay. That realization didn't change my understanding of who I loved. It changed my understanding of the religious world I had inherited. Up to that point, I had already struggled with the logic of Catholic doctrine, but now I was confronted with something more personal. The sense of tradition I grew up with really had no place for the fullness of who I was. I remember thinking, if God made me, why would God make me this way and then condemn me for it? The question didn't make me an atheist, but it cracked open the assumption that religious authority was automatically trustworthy. It made me realize that my own lived experience, my dignity, my identity, my capacity for love, had to matter at least as much as the doctrines I had been taught. So I stepped away from theology and religion. And let me pause here to acknowledge one thing, one religious tradition that holds some resonance for me today, and that's paganism, especially its reverence for the natural world. Paganism reminds me that the earth is not a backdrop to our lives, but a source of them. It invites us to see the turning of seasons, the cycles of growth and decay, the rhythm of the moon and the tides as sacred in their own right. I don't take these ideas literally, but I take them seriously because they call me to pay attention, to honor the world that sustains us, and recognize our responsibility for it. Now I'll continue my journey. My lived experience opened the questions, but it was my scientific training that shaped the answers. Studying chemistry taught me to think of things in terms of evidence and mechanisms. It taught me to separate what I hope is true from what the data actually shows. And when I applied that clarity to questions of faith, the explanations I had inherited simply didn't align with the world I saw. And yet, I want to say something important. Even though I no longer believe in a supernatural God, I have deep respect for the role religion plays in many people's lives. I've seen the comfort faith can bring to those facing loss. The familiar prayer or a hymn can steady someone in the darkest moments of grief. I have seen how belief in forgiveness and redemption can transform lives, especially those rebuilding after hardship. These experiences are real and they matter. But for me, the most compelling challenge to theism is what C.S. Lewis once titled the problem of pain. And that phrase captures the heart of my own struggle with the idea of a loving interventionist God. If a God existed, I cannot imagine a children's cancer ward should exist. If it were up to me, there would be no need for such places. And if God existed with the power to prevent such suffering, I cannot understand why God would choose not to. And then there is something called divine hiddenness. If a loving God wanted a relationship with humanity, why remain invisible, silent, and undetectable? Because I cannot reconcile the suffering of innocence with the idea of a loving interventionist God, and because I cannot find this hidden God, I realized I had to seek another moral framework. Even if God does exist, I can't imagine any moral universe in which the suffering of children is part of that plan. And if I cannot understand the moral system attributed to God, then I must build one rooted in humanity, in human responsibility, in compassion, and human accountability. So what of other scientists who say they found God later in life? These stories are often just, they're everywhere, right? To convince us that there are people around who feel this way, but they're going to find the answer. And so recently, Andrew Huberman, who is kind of a social media celebrity and a scientist and a public speaker, recently spoke about his own turn toward faith. He describes feeling a kind of inner tension for years and that embracing religion finally brought him peace. I don't doubt this experience of relief, but emotional relief is not evidence. Feeling better after adopting a belief doesn't tell us whether that belief is true. It just only met a psychological need. By his own account, he is handing off his worries to a higher power. In his book, The Language of God, geneticist Francis Collins tells a similar story. He describes encountering a frozen waterfall where 3 streams had become frozen, and he immediately saw a symbol of the Trinity. And his emotional release when he felt that became belief. I don't question the sincerity of that moment any more than I question Huberman's. But again, emotional relief is not evidence. A powerful feeling or a meaningful symbol doesn't confirm the existence of God. It confirms that a person found comfort in a particular interpretation. In both cases, the shift toward faith seems to have soothed an inner tension, but not answered an empirical question. My own path was different. I couldn't treat comfort as confirmation. I can't hand my questions off. I had to follow them. And not only does agnostic atheism provide me comfort, it has required me to build a moral framework that motivates me to build strong, healthy, and be emotionally open and deeply involved in caring for my community and the people I love. And this very much includes my UU community, which has given me a place to practice compassion, to grow in honesty, and to live out my responsibility I feel to the world and to one another. That is the moral center I have come to, a commitment to compassion, to responsibility, and to this fragile, beautiful world we share. In quantum theory of physics, entanglement occurs when two particles interact in a way that their states become linked. After that interaction, measuring one instantly determines the state of the other, even when those particles are separated by light years. Einstein called this spooky action from a distance, and experiments have confirmed it. And even though quantum entanglement is a physical phenomenon and not a spiritual one, it is astonishing. It reminds us that the universe is far stranger, more intricate, and more beautiful than our everyday intuitions can grasp. It tells us that there are mysteries woven into reality, mysteries we have not yet unraveled, mysteries that invite humility rather than certainty. To me, that is its real power, not as a metaphor, but as a reminder that the world is richer and more interconnected than we currently understand. We are not quantum particles, but we are beings whose lives intertwine. Every choice we make ripples outward, every kindness, every cruelty, every moment of care or neglect affects others. We are entangled, not by physics, but by consequence, by community, and by the fragile miracle of sharing a world. If no divine hand is guiding events, then our responsibilities to one another become even more profound. If there is no cosmic safety net, then we are the safety net. If there is no supernatural justice, then justice is something we build. Entanglement reminds us that interdependence, that independence is an illusion. We are bound up in each other's well-being. Your flourishing is connected to mine. My choices shape your world, and the moral weight of that connection is real. I'm talking about choosing to care, because just maybe no one else is going to do that for us. May we honor the mystery we share by living gently, by living bravely, and by meeting one another with open hands.